What motivates a person? What makes us act in a certain way? What makes us feel alive? These are feelings. This is the leading force that determines our aspirations. However, the question of what drives a person, reason or love, is still open. But which is the most important of these? What moves a person forward? According to experts, there are motivational forces in the human psyche that make him act in a certain way, express himself, feel, experience, and think. These forces are drives and needs. There are two categories of drives and needs. First, cravings for creation, love, tenderness, sexuality, the instinct of self-preservation, the need for creativity, knowledge, values, the will to meaning and freedom. The second one, the urge to destroy, aggression, the instinct of self-destruction, sadism, masochism, narcissism, emotional dependence, the will to power and submission. We live in an era of technological progress that hardens people, dulls feelings, and casts doubt on the notion that a person is driven by desire. The theory of motivation of human behavior is taught in a separate course in institutes and is studied by the scientific community. But there is no consensus on what drives a person. The mind is defined by two concepts, fear and pride. It is these components that provoke and motivate a person to act. Events in life, whether good or bad, are perceived by a person as inhibiting or provoking motives for action in the future. In turn, pride can be defined as the desire to be ahead, to achieve more than others, to prove that you are worth something and can be above others. Here, both failures and disappointments can serve as a motivating signal to act only in order to amuse one's pride. Any society functions in accordance with any rules or principles. However, pride, being the best motivation, often forces us to act contrary to the established rules of behavior. It turns out that in such situations, the action itself is important. And if reason is a rational motivation, then feelings are an irrational motivation of behavior for an individual. These are dangerous desires that drive a person. People like to justify their actions with the words "I want so much," "I love so much," and so on. Yielding to such impulses, many act rashly, impulsively, while not often even trying to think about the consequences, succumbing to momentary emotions. It is often possible to face the fact that satisfying your little joys or acting in a certain situation the way you want, the actions of an individual absolutely defy logic, and for others such actions may simply be inexplicable. It can concern any sphere of life: travel, choosing partners, hobbies, professions, and so on. You can spend your whole life doing architecture and then give up everything and go sing in a restaurant just because you've been dreaming about it for a long time. No one will understand, but we want it so much, like it, and so on. Many people believe that it is love that drives a person. It turns out that both criteria occupy an important place in every person's life. Thanks to both love and reason, a person can balance his whole life. Often a person is driven by an idea. Scientists have long proved that the real joy and feeling of flow a person gets first of all by doing what he likes, but according to reason and logic. The actions that we commit on emotions dictate to us inexplicable desires that we strive to fulfill contrary to accepted norms, principles, and logic. Voluntarily, no person will act his whole life only based on what his mind dictates. And for some, the betrayal of their heartfelt feelings and love is akin to a crime and is possible only under violent influence from the outside. An example is marriage at the insistence of parents, without love. Both ancient thinkers and modern philosophers adhere to the position, the essence of which is that reason will never defeat feelings and love. And here we are not talking about physical attractions, but about the most sincere deep love that comes from the heart. Reason and motivation have no meaning when there is love in a person's life, which occupies all thoughts, which tears from the inside, for which you want to move mountains. When thoughts do not give rest day or night, then what kind of mind can we talk about? Philosophers of all times and peoples were interested in this question. Let's look at the most significant theories. For Plato, the driving force not only of the development of a particular individual, but also of society as a whole, was the desire for knowledge, research, and truth. True pleasure is not following feelings. Only wisdom determines all actions, and only thanks to it you can get real pleasure. Plato wrote that there is no alternative to the power of joy, which is the joy of knowledge. It can be concluded that Plato preferred reason, moral duty, and service to society rather than feelings and emotions. Sigmund Freud held a different point of view. He believed that the force that makes a person act is nothing more than people's sexual desires. And this motivational force does not let go of a person from birth to death. Sexual desires that are not at least half realized lead to aggressive behavior. Most people act only based on their base instincts, and their actions are not subject to reason or logic. Freud attached great importance to human sexual life, considering it the main thing. To this day, Followers of the philosopher's theory urge everyone around to take care of their sex life, as this allows them to avoid manifestations of aggression, neuroses, health problems, and even trouble communicating with people. However, this theory has long been under the shadow of doubt, because long-term observations tell us that libido is not yet the ultimate truth. Sigmund Freud's theory was that the driving instinct and motivational force is the libido instinct. The theory is still popular today. For example, many psychotherapists develop their own techniques based on Freud's theory to identify problems in the behavior of spouses. For example, in order to give them the correct diagnosis, the psychotherapist pre-asks questions about intimate life, believing that marriage can only be saved by restoring the sexual life of partners. In many cases, such techniques work, but not everyone agrees with this. In particular, the famous Australian psychotherapist Alfred Langle. And when asked what motivates a person, he replied that first of all these are sensations and feelings. Often, a person is driven by instincts, namely negative situations, various troubles, inconveniences, difficulties, which do not so much motivate as force him to act. The simplest example that everyone knows is the fear of children bringing a bad grade from school for homework or bad behavior. It is not only the fear of poor grades that works here, but also condemnation from teachers, fear of parental control and subsequent punishment. However, negative motivation is most often short-term and not designed for a long time. For example, for school children, this motivation ends exactly at the moment when the punishment is cancelled. The incentive to act disappears immediately. The following factors cause negative motivation: verbal, material or physical punishment, restrictions on freedom, or other deprivations that are of a social nature. With age, a person's resistance to negative motivation also grows, while for children and adolescents who are directly dependent on their parents or other people, it is quite difficult to condescend to negativity. What forces drive a person in his activities? The first and most important thing that motivates us to engage in ourselves and develop is the desire to realize ourselves in life, which, to one degree or another, is inherent in every person. Here we are talking about the fact that a person must constantly learn something new. Someone attends courses, improves their qualifications, learns something new throughout their life. If you believe Maslow's theory, then the best source of motivation is a passionate desire to prove to yourself and others your compactness in professional matters, as well as the full realization of yourself in certain areas of life. The scientist believed that the main motivating force is the movement towards learning something new. At the same time, fear of uncertainty can inhibit this motivation. The greatest joy for a person is his own new achievements, preferably with a positive outcome. As for failures, mistakes, and criticism, there is an inhibition of active motivation, which can affect further human activity. The example of other successful and talented people also encourages action, which can even be compared with the inner satisfaction of their achievements. This is due not only to the achievement of goals, fame, but also recognition from other people. Only the anticipation of new victories, especially after a series of successful results, encourages a person to do impossible things. In this theory, we are not talking about factors that are directly related to a particular activity. They are defined as motivation that affects the external content, not the execution process. This can include a sense of responsibility to other people, and it does not matter at all whether they are relatives, colleagues, or someone else. It is also impossible not to mention the desire to be recognized, to get approval from others. Nowhere without self-improvement, motivation to get a certain status and social position. And even the most banal motive is the desire to avoid unpleasant consequences and the fear of getting a negative result because of their own actions and deeds. As for external motivation, here we are not talking about the content of the activity. This factor does not arouse any interest. First of all, it is external attractiveness. Here we are talking about material prosperity, recognition, social status, and so on. It turns out that in external motivation, evaluation of activities, behavior, and actions by other people is of great importance. In this case, it is most important for a person to hear and realize that his activity has weight among others. Fame and recognition are what everyone craves. It follows from this that effective activity is possible only if it is based on several motivational aspects at once. The more motives a person has, the more effective his activities will be. Therefore, our desire for self-development includes each of the listed theories in one way or another.